What if the asteroid missed Earth? Then the dinosaurs probably stay in charge, and we probably never show up. 66 million years ago, one badly timed space rock smashed into Earth and changed everything. The skies darkened, food chains collapsed, and most dinosaurs disappeared. So flip it. The asteroid misses. No global disaster. No mass extinction. Dinosaurs keep ruling the planet. At first, that sounds amazing. Giant predators still stalk the land. Massive herbivores still thunder across forests. The world looks less like human history and more like a permanent dinosaur documentary. But here is the catch. Mammals only got their big chance because the dinosaurs were gone. Before that, most mammals were small, nervous, and very good at not getting eaten. If the dinosaurs stay, mammals probably stay tiny. Which means no humans, no cities, no kingdoms, no pyramids, no phones,
No Internet.
no one arguing in comment sections. And unfortunately, no blob narrator explaining any of this. That is the weird thing about history. Sometimes the biggest winner is not the strongest animal. It is the one that gets lucky. So if dinosaurs never go extinct, the world stays louder, bigger, and much more terrifying. And the biggest winner in human history might be a rock that showed up at exactly the wrong time. The man who sold the Eiffel Tower twice. His name was Victor Lustig, and somehow, he convinced people he owned Paris's most famous landmark. This was 1925. The Eiffel Tower was expensive to maintain, and some people still thought it was ugly. So Lustig saw an opportunity. He dressed like a government official, printed fake official papers, and invited scrap metal dealers to a secret meeting at a fancy hotel. Then he basically said, "Gentlemen, the government has decided to quietly tear down the Eiffel Tower." And the crazy part? It sounded believable. He said the public would be angry if they knew too early, so everything had to stay confidential. Then he picked one dealer, convinced him the deal was real, and sold him the tower for scrap. The buyer was so embarrassed after realizing the scam that he didn't even report it. So Lustig looked at that silence and thought, "Nice, let's do it again." He returned to Paris and tried to sell the Eiffel Tower a second time. But this time, someone warned the police, and Lustig ran. That's the amazing part. Most scammers sell fake jewelry. This man looked at the Eiffel Tower and said, "Yeah, I can sell that." Twice. The war humans lost to birds? That actually happened. This was Australia in 1932. Farmers in Western Australia had a problem. Thousands of emus marched across farmland, eating crops, smashing fences, and acting like giant feathered bulldozers. So the government came up with a solution that sounds fake. They sent soldiers with machine guns against birds. At first, this looked easy. Emus cannot shoot back. They do not have tanks. They do not have generals. They barely look like they know where they are going. Turns out, they did not need a plan. When the soldiers opened fire, the emus scattered everywhere. Some ran into the bush. Some sprinted across open fields. Some got hit, kept moving, and somehow made the whole army look confused. The soldiers would line up a shot, start firing, and the emus would split into tiny groups like they had accidentally invented guerrilla warfare. After days of effort, thousands of rounds of ammunition, and results that were honestly embarrassing for everyone involved, the operation was called off. And that is the amazing part. History has wars between empires, kingdoms, and nations. But this one ended with trained soldiers looking at oversized birds and basically saying, "Fine, you win." What if the Titanic never sank? Well, first, the iceberg still exists. The real change is simple. The lookout spots it earlier, the ship turns sooner, and instead of ripping open the side, Titanic arrives in New York with a scary story and some embarrassed rich people. So what happens next? Honestly, probably nothing good. Because disaster is what forced change. After Titanic sank, ships needed enough lifeboats for everyone. Wireless radios stayed active all night, and iceberg patrols became serious. But if Titanic survives, the company gets praised. The captain becomes a legend. The newspapers call it a miracle. And everyone learns the worst possible lesson. Bigger ships are basically safe. So the next massive ocean liner keeps the same confidence. Maybe even worse. More passengers. More luxury. More don't worry, we built this properly. Then one night, another ship hits another iceberg, or catches fire, or gets trapped in fog. But this time, the safety reforms haven't happened yet. And now the tragedy is bigger. That's the weird thing about history. Sometimes the disaster doesn't prevent progress. It creates it. So if Titanic never sinks, the name Titanic becomes a success story. But the lesson still arrives later. Probably with a different ship, a higher death toll, and the same shocked world asking why nobody prepared. The Queen who outsmarted Europe by doing almost nothing? Elizabeth I just refused to pick a husband. This sounds like gossip, but it was actually politics. In the 1500s, England was surrounded by powerful countries that wanted influence. Spain wanted influence. France wanted influence. English nobles wanted influence. And the easiest way to get it was simple: marry the Queen. Because if Elizabeth married the wrong man, suddenly England might get dragged behind someone else's throne. So instead of choosing, she kept everyone waiting. One prince thinks he has a chance. Another prince thinks he has a chance. Foreign ambassadors write home like, "Guys, maybe this is happening." And Elizabeth just keeps smiling, delaying, negotiating, and changing the subject. It looked like doing nothing. But doing nothing became a weapon. As long as she stayed unmarried, foreign powers had to keep treating England carefully. Nobody wanted to offend the Queen, who might still become their ally. Meanwhile, Elizabeth kept control of her own court, her own image, and her own country. That's the funny part. Kings built armies. Princes offered marriages. Diplomats wasted years reading signals that were probably just royal politeness. And Elizabeth beat them with the most dangerous answer in history: maybe. The dumbest military plan that somehow worked? Britain took a dead body, dressed him like an officer, filled his pockets with fake secrets, and tossed him into the sea. That was Operation Mincemeat. This was 1943. The Allies wanted Sicily. Problem was, Sicily was so obvious that the Germans were expecting it. So Britain came up with a plan that sounds less like warfare and more like a drunk prank. They found a corpse, gave him a fake identity, Major William Martin, and built him an entire life. Love letters. A bank notice. Theater stubs. Even a photo of his fake fiancée. Then they chained secret documents to him claiming the Allies were actually planning to invade Greece and Sardinia. Next, they dropped the body off the coast of Spain, knowing Spanish officials might share the documents with Germany. And somehow, the Germans swallowed it. Hitler moved troops away from Sicily. He strengthened the wrong places. So when the Allies finally invaded Sicily, the landing was easier than it could have been. That's the insane part. One of the most important deceptions of World War II worked because the enemy believed a dead man's paperwork. History is amazing. Sometimes empires are moved by tanks, and sometimes by a corpse with a fake girlfriend. The emperor who declared war on the ocean? That was Caligula. And somehow this was not even the weirdest thing people said about him. This was ancient Rome. Caligula wanted to look powerful, and one plan was to invade Britain. Big problem: when his army reached the coast, the whole operation went sideways. Maybe the troops refused. Maybe the plan collapsed. Maybe Caligula just lost patience. Ancient writers do not give us a neat answer. But the story they did give us is insane. Caligula marched his soldiers to the beach, lined them up facing the water, and ordered them to attack the sea. Imagine being a Roman soldier, trained for war, standing there with a sword, while your emperor is basically yelling at waves. Then, after this victory, he told the soldiers to collect seashells as spoils of war. Not gold. Not land. Shells. And here's the funny part. Caligula could still spin it. Rome loved symbols. So he could walk away, acting like he had conquered the ocean itself. Was it madness? Was it theater? Was it a cover-up for a failed invasion? Honestly, maybe all three. History has kings who lost battles, emperors who lost empires, and then Caligula, who looked at the sea and said, "You are next." What if Napoleon won at Waterloo? First, Europe would panic. By 1815, Napoleon had already escaped exile, rebuilt an army, and terrified the continent all over again. Waterloo was supposed to be the battle that finally ended him. So let's flip it. Maybe the ground dries faster. Maybe his attacks hit harder. Maybe Wellington's army breaks before the Prussians arrive. Now what? Probably not a giant French world empire. That is the fantasy version. The real version is Messier. A victory at Waterloo buys Napoleon time. He returns to Paris not as a defeated ruler, but as the man who beat Europe's best chance to stop him. Suddenly, every enemy power has the same problem: invade France again. Or talk. Best case for Napoleon, he forces a temporary peace and keeps his throne a little longer. France stays powerful. Britain looks humiliated. Europe stays nervous. Every king on the continent sleeps a little worse. But here is the catch. Napoleon's biggest enemy was not just Britain or Prussia. It was numbers. Too many rivals. Too many wars. Too much of Europe wanted him gone. So if Napoleon wins at Waterloo, history changes fast. Just not forever. He probably does not conquer the world. He just gets one more round.